like to call the roll, Jen.
Counselor Ash. Counselor Kane. Counselor Campbell.
Present.
Counselor Devine.
Present.
Counselor DeBona. Counselor Harris. Counselor Yang.
Present.
Counselor Minton.
Present.
Chairman McCarthy.
Present.
9 members.
I would also like to read the open meeting law. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledgeable and permissible. Can we also just stand and do a quick pledge of allegiance? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll go right to 2024-035, which is a $7 million loan for sewer and system improvements. I know that we had a presentation on that. I'd like to ask any of my colleagues if they have any additional questions. This was one we did a couple of weeks ago before I looked for a motion to approve. Motion by Councilor Harris, second by Councilor DeMont. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? No, the ayes have it. The second is 2024-036. Again, $2.5 million MWRA loan for lead service removal, which I know that Councilor DeBona had brought this forward. We had a good discussion about it last time, so I'm looking for a motion to approve. Motion by Councilor DeBona, second by Councilor Harris. Yes, sir. Councilor DeBona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to elaborate a little bit on the 2.5 million MWRA loan for lead service removal. Just want to thank the administration for moving forward on this. I know the mayor and the administration have been working on this for years. I brought this about for the lead removal throughout the city of Quincy. We have to find all different type of mechanisms and funding, whether it be in a form of a bond or a grant or and basically just piggyback off of each one. So I want to thank, we've done a lot of good work out in the city. We want to continue to do a lot of great work. Be proactive on the initiatives like this, obviously for the sewer system improvements and obviously for the lead service removal. So that's a very important matter moving forward into 2024. So
Thank you.
I'd be happy. Thank you.
Councilor. So a motion by Councilor DeBona, a second by Councilor Harris. All those in favor? Aye. Those are the ayes have it. Thank you. Third item, 2024-038, $157 million for district improvement financing. I know we have a presentation tonight. I'm going to go right to Mr. Walker first, and then we'll have the presentation. Mr. Walker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, councilors, good evening. It gives me great pleasure on behalf of Mayor Koch to begin tonight's presentation that will help us continue the extraordinary progress we've made in our downtown over the last 10 years or so, even really less than the last decade. Hundreds of new housing units, tens of thousands of square feet of new retail and restaurants, new public amenities and parks, millions of dollars in new tax revenue, and most importantly, a downtown for the first time in 40 years is once again driving our local economy. Jim Fatsis, our Director of Planning and Community Development, will introduce the full team, our team of thousands, as you can see in the audience, cast of thousands, many of whom have been with us from the very beginning and have put in countless hours to help us get to where we are today. But before I hand it over to Jim, I just want to touch briefly on a couple of the big picture pieces of what's before you tonight. There are two major components, three total. The third is a technical revision to one of our existing LDAs, and the legal team can certainly answer any questions you may have on that. The two big pieces before this body are related, but they're not the same, and they're sort of parallel, not necessarily always intersecting. The first is the expansion of the Urban Redevelopment District and our amendment to an Urban Redevelopment Plan, which sets the planning framework for future potential development. As you'll see, we're proposing to expand the geography included in the district to include future development areas that have not been included in the past. And that's a mark of the success that we've had with this body together, working with the mayor, of the success that we've had over the last 10 years, maximizing the development in the downtown to such an extent that we're ready to grow and expand the district. I want to be clear that the URDP that's in front of you tonight, it does have a budget in there, but that is not the budget you're being asked to vote on. Those are all future potential projects, all future discussions, and nothing set in stone going forward. What you will be asked to vote on is the second major component that's before you tonight, and that's the budget on our fifth district improvement financing package that will finance largely 2 parking garages and activate the plans that this body is all aware of, a mixed-use residential development, including a soon-to-be-named specialty grocer and a major medical office building to be occupied by Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. The team will get into the revenue flow and how all that works, but in this piece, I do want to highlight one piece that isn't spelled out in the authorization. What's before you tonight is just that. It's $157 million authorization. That's the total amount. It is not the total amount on what we may or may not need to borrow in the end. There are revenue sources outside of the general tax flow that we project and that we include as part of our planning process that flow back into the district that even conservatively will help us drop the total amount of money that needs to be borrowed substantially below that $157 million. A big example, as members of this body who've been with us for the last decade or so, you know that we've qualified and have had consistent approvals for the state's I-Cubed Economic Development Grant Program. We know that the Healy-Driscoll administration is engaged on this program. We've had an approval for upwards of a decade on this, and ultimately that could provide upwards of $40 million for these garages because of the economic activity that is going to be produced by these 2 private developments I just mentioned. Second, we have land dispositions of our own that will provide more revenue back into the district. Just one example of a number of them. The LDA that I talked about briefly earlier that's going to lead to a specialty grocer and a mixed-use development, that's going to provide the city close to $8 million when that project closes, when the real estate closes, when the project is slated to begin the construction begins and we go through the closing process. There's a number of those land purchases from previous diffs that we've purchased the property, that the time's coming where we're going to be disposing them as part of these projects. So it's another major revenue source that we're going to have in the downtown to help measure the total amount of the appropriation. Those numbers, coupled with expanded parking revenue and a number of the other revenues that we haven't always counted, the parking in particular that we haven't really counted toward what we produce in the downtown for revenue. We're getting there on parking, and we know parking is going to be a viable, lucrative source of revenue going forward. And so that factors into it as well. So there's 3 major real revenue sources outside of having to borrow against everything, having to borrow that we know we're going to be able to provide in the downtown going forward on these projects. This evening, we're not, as Mr. Chairman mentioned, we're not looking for a vote this evening on either of these. The URDP requires a public hearing, and the diff, obviously, there's going to be a lot to digest. So the thought process from the administration is we'll present tonight, provide as much meat on the bone as we can. If there are some preliminary questions that the council has, we're obviously here. We also understand that the council has a busy agenda this evening, so it's obviously up to the body how it wants to proceed, but with the understanding that we fully know that we'll be back before this body at least once, perhaps multiple times, to discuss these items. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Fatsis to introduce the team.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. And through you, Chairman McCarthy, and through to the council. Tonight, we're joined by our team. I'm going to give them to you in the order that they probably need to be heard. From the city of Quincy, you have myself, you have Rob Stevens, the deputy director, and Joe King, which have been focused on the process that you're going to hear tonight. From the BSC group, we have Jeff Fasser, vice president. Jeff has been with us from the very beginning on the URDP planning. Tonight, we're going to give you the URDP planning to kind of set up the diff request. So he'll go after I finish. From Granite City Partners, we have Joe Shea, Holly Robinson, who's a partner, and Olivia von der Beeken, also a partner. The City of Quincy's finance team on this has been Eric Mason, the director, Rick Kosha, specialty on bonds, and then Mike Rowland, of course. And then RKG Associates, represented by Craig Seymour. Craig has been with us from the beginning on the diff. Basically, both Jeff and Craig have been there from the very beginning, and that consistency has been very good for all parties, and especially for the city. So if I may, I'm going to ask Jeff Vassar to give you an overview on the URDP number 6, and then depending on the time, we'll move forward on the other process, and of course, the appropriation ask and the diff information will follow the URDP presentation. With that, I'm going to ask Jeff Vassar to make his presentation to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fatsis. Again, Jeff Vassar. I'm with the BSC Group out of Boston. And good evening, councilors. It's great to be back here again. As Jim mentioned, I've been involved with this very successful project from the start about 18 years ago. And it's great to be back in front of you again to talk about the next phase in the downtown revitalization project involving the URDP, which is an urban renewal plan that's been approved by the state. To start with, I just want to give a brief history of when we started and where we've come over the last 17 years. Some members of this board are new to this urban renewal plan, and others have been here involved in past amendments and efforts. So it's just kind of a reminder of everything we've been through and where we are right now. So first of all, in 2007, the city of Quincy adopted an urban revitalization plan called the Quincy Center District Urban Revitalization Development Plan. Throughout our presentations, you may hear it referred to as the URDP. And that original area was 55 acres in the core of your downtown. Now, this plan built upon many previous planning studies and research that was done as far back as 1972. Various studies, recommendations of things that the city should consider in order to revitalize downtown to its previous very active and thriving community center that it was. Between 1972 and about 2000, in spite of all those studies and recommendations, there were 3 major redevelopment projects, but only 3. There were a lot of parcels that were in need of redevelopment that were not redeveloped. Those 3 major developments were the Stop and Shop office building, the President's Place, and, 2. On the Ford's Restaurant, I'm sorry. Thank you. So in early 2000, the city decided they needed to take a more aggressive approach. They did yet another planning study. They came up with a Quincy Center development plan that served the basis of creating an urban renewal plan for downtown, the URDP. So that process was started in about 2005. And again, the original plan was adopted in 2007 and approved by the state. There were a number of goals and objectives in the original plan. And I'm not going to read each one of these. I'm going to talk about the major themes here, because these plans guided development over the last 17 years. These objectives guided development over the last 17 years, and these objectives are still relevant today regarding what the city wants to see in their vision for downtown. So mixed-use center of choice, and we have seen a lot of development in the center, especially in the Hancock Lot area, with housing, retail, new public spaces and plazas. There are also associated roadway and infrastructure improvements that have occurred. The city also adopted design guidelines for downtown in order to make sure that any new development really celebrates the place and the history of downtown Quincy. So those guidelines have guided recent investments, new development projects, and different rehabilitation that's gone on in the downtown area, and especially the streetscape environment, trying to tie everything together and enhance that historic character. When it comes to sustainable development and enterprise, all these development and recent construction projects have resulted in thousands of construction jobs coming into downtown. And then once the projects are completed, new employment in downtown, new jobs in downtown, putting feet on the streets. As was mentioned earlier, when it comes to multimodal destination, a lot of things have been implemented to improve the, we call transit-oriented development nature of Quincy Center. But there certainly has been a lot of investment in pedestrian connectivity, pedestrian safety, and associated roadway improvements. And also, I want to point out that a lot of what was done in the past 17 years relates to roadway and infrastructure improvements. A lot of those infrastructure improvements are below grade. People tend to forget about them, but millions has gone into that to upgrade infrastructure and stormwater management to support all the new development that's happened in downtown. And that's what you'll see moving forward in all of these expansion areas, the need for the city to still invest in infrastructure and roadway improvements. So once the urban renewal plan was adopted and approved in 2007, the city then negotiated with what was called a master developer called Streetworks, who had a plan to implement improvements on the Hancock and Ross Garage areas, which were the focus of the original urban renewal plan, city-owned parcels where the city could control what happens there and generate revenue from sale of those parcels or portions of those parcels. But the Streetworks master plan went even further and looked at other parcels in the downtown area over and above Ross Garage and Hancock Lot. So there was a very comprehensive redevelopment plan, which you can see the diagram on the left, which looked at other parcels and really a wholesale revitalization of downtown, including the mixed use that the city wanted, transit-oriented development that the city wanted, with new retail, housing, commercial, open space, et cetera. And then there were first two amendments to the urban renewal plan were done to advance the Streetworks concept, advance the permitting process that the city wanted to go through for some of the Streetworks projects, and really, set them up for success. Then Amendment 3 came along with the issues with the Quincy Center MBTA station, the issues with the garage and the need to close the garage and then demolish the garage. An opportunity opened up for redevelopment of that area, again, consistent with the city's vision for downtown, mixed use, residential, in combination with a revitalized T station. So the area was expanded, the urban renewal area was expanded in Amendment 3 to include an additional 7 acres around the MBTA area. That's highlighted in I'll call it mustard. Unfortunately, with everything that was done with Streetworks, their plan never really came to fruition, never really gelled and came together. So the city canceled their agreement with Streetworks in 2014. And then Amendment 4 was generated to take out a lot of the Streetworks development program, leave in there the city's desires for the Hancock Lot, the Ross Garage area, and some other adjacent parcels, and named that the city would become the master developer. This means the city would be able to negotiate with private developers, help facilitate deals getting put together. So really, the city was in a position to talk with multiple developers about things that could be done, or the developers' interest in doing work in the Hancock Lot and Ross Garage area. Also at this time, the city engaged a real estate consulting firm, Redgate Real Estate Advisors out of Boston, to provide up-to-date guidance on the current market in the area, what could be feasibly developed in downtown Quincy, what would developers be looking for, what would they be looking to build, and that understanding of the local market really helped guide changes in Amendment 4 and certainly 5 and then 6 as we're going to talk about tonight. So as the city is a master developer, as I mentioned, the city was then coordinating with various developers to advance certain projects in the downtown area. We've seen a lot of action in the Hancock Lot area. Most of that has been redeveloped. There's a couple corner parcels still left there, but we've seen development there. Again, consistent with the objectives and vision with new housing, retail, the public parking garage, and Kilroy Square. With the garage being recommended because it takes up less square footage, smaller building footprint to accommodate a number of cars in the downtown area versus the vast surface lots you had previously. Then, and that plan also was updated to show a development program that included recommendations from Redgate, the real estate advisor, who again was looking at the current market conditions. Tonight, we're here to talk about Amendment 6, which has been prepared. You've been provided a copy of the report. We will be going through the review and approval process with the council, and then it needs to go on to the state for their final review and approval. But Amendment 6 builds upon the previous successes you've seen in the core of the downtown area and looks to expand that to areas adjacent to the downtown area, which I'll describe in a minute. And then again, keeping with the original vision, keeping with the original objectives and recommendations for new open space, new development, and infrastructure improvements. The 4 areas are identified on this map and include what we're calling the Granite Street area, School Street area, Town Brook and Judicial Center area, and the proposed presidential center area. And with these expansions of the urban renewal area, its size, which is currently 62 acres, will be increased to 130 acres. One thing that this plan does, and it's highlighted in yellow, is acknowledges what's being proposed for redevelopment of the Ross Garage area. Again, Ross Garage was part of the original plan, seen limited activity in that area, but as you know, recent development projects have been approved in that area. So those are folded into the plan so the state and other entities see what has been invested in or will be invested in that area. Those investments include the medical office building, include the multi-use building, mainly residential and retail, and 2 new parking garages in that area, which will be explained a little further on in the presentation. And also new development along Hancock Street. We've seen some development investment along Hancock Street, but there's still some parcels and some desired green space to connect the Ross Garage area to Hancock and other parts of downtown. Those are included in Amendment 6. So the first area I want to talk about is the Granite Street area. This is an expansion area going across Bergen Parkway to Granite Street. And based on our assessment of the market conditions, as well as some interest expressed by developers, there is a real interest to minimize the amount of surface parking in that area by Star Market and then across Hannon Parkway where the TJ Maxx is, and get more development in there. New development would have parking within that development footprint, so there's no new garages being proposed in that area, but much more space for development, which again includes a mix of uses such as retail, housing, maybe a little bit of office space there. And the plan includes a potential build out of 126 square feet of new retail or commercial space in that area, 7,500 of office space, and up to 732 new residential units. Then moving across Bergen Parkway, we have the area we're calling the School Street area, which runs between Hannon Parkway and School Street from the MBTA tracks on the left up to Mechanic Street on the right. A number of parcels in that area which seem to be ripe for development. There's been private interest in some of those areas. And some of them on the left, on the Mechanic Street side, are parcels that one of them the city owns, and other ones are underutilized, and there's a potential for new development in that area there. And again, our estimates are about close to 100,000 square feet of new commercial space, about 600 residential units in that area, maybe some office space mixed in there, depending what the development program is going to be. And this is more of a long-term vision for this area. We think Granite the Granite Street area is more immediate, but the School Street may be, a 10 to 20-year window to develop that area. Next area is the Regional Justice Center. The current courthouse property will be redeveloped into a regional courthouse or regional justice center. The state is taking that initiative. That is not a city initiative, but the city is certainly here to work with the state as appropriate and help with the redevelopment of that area, which will replace the existing jobs there are expected to go into the new center, but that will also draw new employment into that building as it will be a regional facility. The next area is the MBTA station. And as I mentioned earlier, with the demolition of the garage there was seen as an opportunity for mixed-use development in that area there. You've seen recent interest in development in that part of Hancock Street at the Citizens Bank site and the Masonic Home. This area, again, is ripe for development, especially being so close to the T station. The MBTA will be managing that redevelopment program, but it's expected that there will be new residential units there, new commercial space, some office space, and up to 420 residential units based on a previous development plan that was provided to the MBTA for that site. So again, that may be more long-term also because it's being managed by the MBTA and they have a number of things to take into consideration when they look at the redevelopment of their property, especially around the T station. And the last expansion area is the area being proposed for the Adams Presidential Center. This is also an important gateway into downtown. This presidential center will really be promoting citizenship and public service. Will include upgrades to Freedom Park, and there'll certainly be needs for infrastructure and roadway improvements associated with that project. So that is one of the reasons why that area is being included as an expansion area. There'll be investment in utilities, roadways, and the park. So that's a quick overview of what's the major elements of the plan. I'll now turn it over to Jim. Turn it back to Mr. Fatsis, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Jeff. At this time, I'm just going to recess out of the finance meeting so we can have a public hearing at 6:30, open the council, and then come right back to finance. So at this point at 6:28, we'll recess finance and we'll be right back. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Monday, April 22nd, 6:30 p.m. public hearing to order. This public hearing is for Council Order 2024-042, Utility Grant of Location, National Grid, Verizon, Field Street. So at this point, I'd like to ask anyone wishing to speak in favor or opposition to come to the podium, state your name and address. If you do not wish to speak, but would like your support or opposition recorded, please sign in on the sheet on the table at the back of the chamber. So if there's anybody willing to speak in favor or against, please come up to the podium. Okay, so seeing no further public comment, I'd like to close this hearing at 6:31, and we'll be back at 6:35 for the next public hearing. Thank you. Thank you, Jen. Good evening. I'd like to call the Monday, April 22nd, 6:35 public hearing to order. This public hearing is for Council Order 2024-043, Utility Grant Location, National Grid, Verizon, Fenno Street. So at this point, I'd like to ask anyone wishing to speak in favor or opposition to come to the podium, state your name and address. If you do not wish to speak but would like your support or opposition recorded, please sign in on the sheet on the table at the back of the chamber. So if there's anybody who'd like to speak in favor or against, please come to the podium at this point on this issue. So, Seeing no further public comment, I would close this public hearing at 6:35, and we'll be going right into the start of the council meeting. Thank you.
Good evening. We'll call the Monday, April 22nd, 2024 City Council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Counselor Campbell. Counselor Devine. Counselor DeBona.
Present.
Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang. Counselor McCarthy.
Present.
Counselor Minton. President Kane.
Present. Thank you. Please stand to observe a moment of silence. Please use this moment as you will. Please turn to the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you please read the open meeting law?
Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and deemed acknowledged and permissible.
Thank you. We're going to put this meeting into recess and go back into finance.
Thank you. Raise I'd like to bring the Finance Committee back to order. Mr. Fatsis, I think you want to hit the podium for a sec?
Please, thank you. At this point, we're going to go over the second part of the program that will be before you tonight, which is more the 2024-038. It is the $157 million for district improvement financing. I'm going to ask Holly, I'm going to ask Holly to come up and give her read, Holly Robinson, partner with Granite City Partners, her read on the DIF financing that you have before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, councilors. My name is Holly Roach Robinson of Granite City Partners. I'm here to talk to you today about the district improvement financing bond authorization package that's before you tonight. As a quick overview, the district improvement financing, what we commonly refer to as a DIF, is a tool that cities and towns can use to capture tax revenue from private development and reinvest that back into a specific area in the form of public improvement or economic development projects. As Mr. Fasher just reviewed earlier, the City of Quincy has utilized this tool to great success in the downtown since the DIF's enactment in 2007. Before you tonight is the fifth bond authorization package since the DIF was enacted. The total requested amount is $157 million. Just over 85% of that amount is allotted to two parking structures, which I'll go over in just a moment. But also included within that amount is building remediation and demolition, environmental remediation, utility improvements, surface improvements, consultant services, legal services, and operational staff. Diving right into the parking garages, and I apologize for the formatting here. Historically, throughout the city's planning iterations, harkening back to the streetworks era, the city has always seen a large singular parking garage in the Ross area, sort of west of Hancock Street, not only to replace the aging Ross garage that was demolished in 2017, but also to accommodate the parking needs of the downtown on that side. With the current developments that are before us, especially the Fox Rock Medical Office Building and the 300-unit apartment mixed-use development by Atlantic Management, the current analysis shows that it's more beneficial to have two smaller garages within that area. So if you look at the figure to the right up here, the blue box that's north of the General's Bridge is what we're proposing as the Ross North Garage, and the box south of the General's Bridge, currently where the IHOP stands, is what we're referring to as the Ross South Garage. Going over the Ross North Garage first, this garage is intended to be 500 spaces to serve the medical office building, but also surrounding retail and housing developments, sort of on that north side of McConville Way and Hancock Street. It's proposed to be 6.5 stories with a half level underground and 6 stories above ground. 50 spaces are proposed to include electric vehicle charging stations to start, but we are proposing to design that building with future electric vehicle expansion, should that be needed. We're also proposing to build the garage to support future solar panels on the roof. Within your bond authorization package are cost estimates, and that cost to construct for this garage is just at $50 million. This is a rendering of the Ross North Garage, as if you were standing on McConville Way in the General's Park area and you were looking out towards Bergen Parkway. You can see that this garage is very similar in structure to the Kilroy Garage, as that it will be a precast structure. The stair towers are proposed to be made out of glass and metal, and there's proposed to be a brick facade on the front of the garage. This rendering shows the garage as if you were standing on Bergen Parkway, right at the General's Bridge, and you were looking north towards the Stop and Shop headquarters. You can see in the foreground here is the medical office building, and in the background on the left side of the rendering is the garage structure. Moving on to the Ross South Garage. This is anticipated to have 950 spaces to serve the specialty grocer and the retail and housing developments. This garage is proposed to be 8 stories with 1 level at grade and 7 stories above ground. 100 spaces are proposed to include electric vehicle charging stations, with the design of the building to accommodate future electric vehicle charging station expansion. And the building, again, is proposed to be designed to support future solar panels on the roof. The cost to construct this garage is at $78 million. There is also an operations and maintenance line item included for both garages that is at $3.5 million. And that is to operate the garages over 3 years once they're constructed. This rendering of the Ross South Garage is as if you were standing on the General's Bridge and you're looking south towards Hannon Parkway. You can see the signs with the grocer on the right side of the rendering is the parking structure, and the area with the glass is the apartment units on the left side of the rendering. And this rendering is if you are standing on Hannon Parkway, looking towards McConville Way. And again, you can see on the front is the apartment units, and on the back towards the left is the garage structure. Related to the garages, but as a separate line item, are costs for environmental remediation. There are cost estimates within your bond authorization package from EBI Consulting to remediate the soil in the Ross North area, the Ross South area, and at 1455 and 1459 Hancock Street. We've also included cost estimates to abate and demolish the building at 1384 Hancock Street, which is where the Acapulco's restaurant currently stands today. We're proposing to demolish that building in order to create a passive park to honor John Quincy Adams, the 6th President of the United States, former statesman and congressman. That location would put the park along the President's Trail, so as people walk from Peacefield to the Abigail Adams Cairn, there'd be a stop honoring the 6th President. For utility improvements, we're proposing to underground the overhead utilities on Coddington Street from Spear Street all the way down to the Southern Artery, Coddington, C Street intersection. And undergrounding these utilities is especially important to protect them from vehicular accidents should someone hit a telephone pole or inclement weather, especially high winds during hurricanes. This is important as these lines feed the public safety headquarters, and getting these lines underground to eliminate any potential downtime is very significant since we're moving the Emergency Operations Center over to the new building at 1C Street. Undergrounding these lines will also provide wider sidewalk space for pedestrians as they're walking through the area. Lastly, we have consultant, legal, and operational services. Consultant services include traffic engineering, civil engineering, owner's project management, and relocation services. The legal services line item is for easements, land disposition, and parking agreements. And operational services include city personnel for downtown management. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Mason to talk about the financial impacts of the DIF.
Good evening, Council. So as the group has explained the different financial pictures going forward and what the different plans involve, I think it's really important to to break it down into three different groups. The first would be the DIF debt picture, and that's kind of where we are right now. So currently we have $236 million in outstanding bonds. About 90% of those are in short-term debt, also known as BANs, bond anticipation notes. We will be seeing those bleed down pretty aggressively over the next 6 to 12 years. In the current interest rate environment, it's not uncommon for these, even though we're now going to start paying principal, for there not to be that dramatic of an increase in overall debt payment. You're probably talking about an increase of debt payment of about 20 to 30% as it transitions over to a bond. Now, with that said, we've also expended about 90%. So we only have about 10.2% of all approved DIF spending or DIF authorizations currently available. With this new DIF debt package, you're going to see it increase to about $393.8 million. But this increase is quite different, and Chief of Staff Chris Walker did a good job expressing, and I know the group up here did too, where we're going to have revenue that is going to come in and offset a large portion of the borrowing costs for this project. Now, something I do want to make clear is that even though we will have revenue dedicated to this, and I'll get a little more into kind of those specifics, I want to make clear that this is not a revenue bond. And part of the reasons why we wouldn't pursue a revenue bond is that revenue bonds are different than your general obligation bond. So DIF, we use that term a lot. We say DIF debt, we say a DIF bond. When we say a DIF bond, what we're really saying is Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40Q bond, and they're bonding under that authorization. That's different than a revenue bond, where a revenue bond means there's a specific dollar amount tied and a specific revenue that goes in to support that debt service. That's not how DIF debts work, and that's a good thing. So DIF works through the same principle as general obligation bonds, where there's an increase in tax levy, that revenue is then collected and services the debt. What we do is we hire companies like RKG that come in and allow us to itemize that. In addition, we work very heavily with the Bureau of Accounts, which helps with this process too. And why that's a superior process than going through a revenue bond is that when you invoke general obligation bond status, you get a much lower interest rate. In many cases, it's 150 to 200 basis points lower, which is quite literally can be tens of millions of dollars over the lifespan of a bond. But that doesn't change that there's a dedicated, that doesn't change the fact there's a dedicated revenue service for this debt service. Now, historically, we haven't done this. What we've done with the DIF is that any surplus DIF revenue flows into the general fund. That can continue to be done. I will say there's a small caveat to that, which is that parking receipts from Kilroy Garage have been flowing into what's called a special revenue account and is used to reduce the TPAL budget as the body votes on every year. But with these garages getting built, that process can be expanded to cover more of the DIF revenue that's generated from these garages. Now, while we historically have only used this type of revenue to offset operations and TPAL, there's nothing barring the city from segmenting these funds, whether it's in a special revenue account, like the parking receipts, or we can create a new revolving account that would allow us to take that revenue from the DIF, from the parking operations in the DIF, and dedicate it to debt service. And we would show that in the budget through an offset. One of the things, I want to make sure if I have. Now, one last point is I want to talk about diff lifespan. So the diff has a lifespan, believe it or not. And I know sometimes the diff can seem monolithic in nature, but under statute, the diff has a 30-year lifespan. After 30 years, the council has the option to renew the diff for two 10-year periods afterwards. So that'd be a total of 50 years. Regardless if the council decides to vote on that, we can do math and know that this bond will supersede that period. So one of the questions may come about saying, well, then what do we do if there's no more, if the diff dissolves, what happens to the revenue that pays it? Well, that's why the diff is structured this way. It is part of the tax levy. So even though the diff as a tool may dissolve, the underlying increase in levy and therefore tax revenue does not dissolve and is there to support the debt. So even though this bond will likely extend greater than if approved, greater than the lifespan of, the laws that create the diff, there's still that revenue there to support it. That revenue does not dissolve. Now, to summarize some of the revenue and expenses of this, and we're talking right. I know Craig included a lot of data for the overall revenue and debt picture. I want to talk specifically about this bond itself, and what we're seeing is that over the course of this entire offering, and this is included in the package that was given, if you take the overall debt service and you compare it to the overall revenue generated from these parcels and garage operations, you'll see a surplus of approximately $28 million. Now that can seem quite interesting, and I will show the little chart just to help out. Now you see this triangle, triangle where combined debt service supersedes combined revenue. And what that shows is a 12-year period between fiscal year 2035 and fiscal year 2046 where we have a deficit. What's important to remember is that there's two types of deficits. There's operational deficit, and then there's an overall or agglomerated debt deficit. Now, what that means, we'll have 12 annual deficits in this comparison, but overall, the total benefit, or the total sum of the surplus of debt service revenue and of debt service and combined revenue, at its lowest point will be 3.4 million in surplus, which generally means that though we have those deficit years, there's already funds built up on top of that. So if we do decide, if the body does decide to segment the revenue of this account into a special revenue account, it would be able to draw down on that even in deficit years and avoid any effect to the general fund. This is quite unique. I would say this is unique to structures like this. And there's many different ways to, as I mentioned earlier, to segment out those funds. I would particularly recommend a Chapter 53.5G special revenue account to do that. But there's certainly other options. So before I turn it over to RKG, I do just want to close on one portion of this, saying that while the overall diff has pondered these large-scale purchases, since its inception, I think this was an idea that always existed in our financial parameters. But since that time, these projects like this have been included in our financial projections. These are conversations we've had with Standard & Poor's. These are conversations we've had with our financial advisors. These are conversations we have with our independent auditors. So while these numbers are very large and they should be respected in their size, as I know this body does heavily weigh them, it's also something that we've adopted as part of our financial policies for decades now. And I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Eric. Mr. Chairman, through you to the members of the council, it's a pleasure to be back here in these chambers again. It's been a little while with COVID and everything, but I'm Craig Seymour, by the way. I'm representing RKG Associates. We've been your financial advisors on both the DIF and the iCube projects going back almost too many years to count now. But I think we're getting to a point where I'm very proud to be here to be able to talk about where we are in the process and what this next step is. There's some familiar faces up here, and I apologize to those who have heard this DIF spiel before, but there are some new faces. And what I'd like to do is go back to the beginning and start and explain what the DIF is and kind of summarize all of the details that you've just heard relative to the cash flows and to the interest rates and stuff like that, if I may. Let's go right one, you said, right? There we go. All right. DIF is tax increment financing. It's called district improvement financing in Massachusetts. Everywhere else in the country, it's called tax increment financing, or TIF. Massachusetts has a separate TIF program. But what it is, it's a very simple concept that allows a city or a town or any organization that has taxing authority to be able to earmark revenues from new development in order to support public infrastructure investments that help create that new investment. And that certainly is what has been done here. Eric just mentioned that it's a general obligation bond. And what it includes is not only just the increase in property tax property tax revenues, but it can also include parking revenues and some other revenues, just like the monies from it can be spent not only on the hard assets, but also some of the soft assets that go along with it. The important thing to consider is what starts from the base. And in the city of Quincy, our base goes back to 2006, when in downtown DIF area, which includes the area, by the way, that with the expanded URDP area. So they're now pretty much the same area, which is good. The base taxes coming off of that were essentially frozen in our model and increased actually with some inflation. So the amount of taxes that came off in 2006 never changed. That continues to flow into the general fund. It's only the increase in tax revenues off of that that have increased, and that is earmarked through this disciplined approach to the DIF account to be used for these various uses. We have been tasked since the very beginning to try to forecast out what these revenues are going to be. In other words, where is the money coming from to pay for these improvements? And what we did is we created a financial model that looks at the city, the downtown area that's included in the DIF, and to forecast out what the current revenues are and what the future revenues are going to be. And the logic behind that model, which you see in this slide, is we take the base year data, we take the assessment values at the time and the tax rates. These are the basic assumptions that build the model. We then look at the future and say, what development can happen in this area when these improvements are made, when Town Brook is daylighted and improved, when the new streets and the new facades and those types of things are done. And what we do is we look on that on a parcel by parcel basis. And that program changes, obviously, as you can see, from the original Streetworks programs to what we have today. It changes, and it has to be updated in that model, which is one of the things that we do. It also looks at the timing and the phasing. We've gone in the last 15 years through some serious ups and downs and some question marks about viability, but we've been able to build that into the model and use that to forecast out what the revenues are going to be. And the outcome of the model is, what is the new incremental new tax revenue, and from that we determine what is the bonding capacity of that. Key assumptions in the elements of the DIF model that we use is, again, it's built up parcel by parcel, but it's also works in very close association with your assessor. Every year, we talk to the assessor, get the new assessed values for all the parcels in the downtown, and we recalibrate the model to that. We also look at any changes that have been taking place within the parcels. Parcels have been combined and new investments added. We do that very carefully so that we do not disrupt the base level of the taxes that continue to flow into the general fund. That stays the same. It's inflated at 3% a year, but it does stays the same. So it's only the new revenue that comes along with that. It's a little complex to do that because of all the movement, but we're able to do that. And we can turn on new development. We can go to a particular parcel, turn on, say that's going to be developed. We're going to put, it's being proposed for X new number of apartments or 10,000 square feet of commercial space or office space. And we work with the assessor to come up with some base values for what those assessments are going to be when it gets turned on. And from that, we also generate internal bond tables, which you'll see in a moment in terms of our forecasts, which are a little bit different from the actual bond tables or bond graphs that you'll see that Mr. Mason has presented, but they're pretty similar to that. And we do our best to be as accurate as possible. I do mention in here bands, and if you're familiar with the bond anticipation notes, Quincy is very unique in that you are able to secure very low interest-only bond anticipation notes for 10 years. That has been an absolutely critical benefit to this entire program in the downtown because it allows you to throw the money or throw the debt service from the interest and principal into the future when the tax revenues are there because the development has taken place. And again, the bottom line here is we take a very, very conservative approach to this. We don't speculate on new development. We only put things in that model that we have a fairly sure idea that's going to happen either now or 5 years from now. And in terms of the rates and so on we take a very conservative approach. This graph and this slide shows the progress that's been made. In 2006, in the base year, there was just under $300 million in assessed value within the downtown Quincy Center. Today, that's over $800 million. It's a $543 million increase in value. And again, it's that value and the taxes coming off of that, which is the prime driver of the revenue going into the DIF. Notice the differences here between the residential in the blue and the commercial and industrial in the yellow or gold. And when we started, there was very little residential tax base in 2006. Today, 57% of the tax base is residential. The commercial is now, in the last couple of years, starting to really grow because you realize you now have residents who are living downtown, who are spending money out on the street, going to the nice restaurants that you have down, and that's encouraging more commercial retail and office growth as well. And it's this growth in the commercial side that truly is going to be the reason, really, it's supporting the reason for the need for the parking garages to handle both the residential and the commercial growth that's taking place. This will be familiar to those that were here the last time when I made my presentation for the for DIF 4. The gold line on the bottom was the debt service necessary to support the original DIFs, and the red line is the increase in debt service that we projected out under DIF 4. The blue line was the expected revenue under our development program going forward. And what that tells us is that the gap between the blue and the red line was the amount of available revenue funds that could go towards continued development in downtown, the infrastructure that is so badly needed for that. Now compare that to this. This is the debt service in red with the new DIF bond and the revenue that's coming in. So you can see starting in this year, there's going to be a positive revenue surplus up until those years that are quite a ways out there that Mr. Mason alluded to, where it gets a little bit tight. But again, the surplus is more than ample to make up any shortfalls in that. So what it's doing is really using up the available capacity, the forecast capacity, to be able to finish the infrastructure that's necessary to support the redevelopment and really the transformation of downtown Quincy. It's a 20-year process. We knew that going into it. And we're almost at the end of that 20 years when these pieces get done. So to conclude, I used to say that downtown Quincy Center was getting traction, both from a market perspective within the greater region and from within the ability to attract investors from not only local investors, local developers, but also from throughout Massachusetts and now throughout the country. Truth of the matter is you've got traction now. You're heading down the road fairly quickly. All four wheels are on the ground, and you've reached that point where the critical mass is there. You've got the mix of the residential and the commercial and the retail and the office space, particularly with the medical office coming in. That's really going to make downtown Quincy work. And it's been the public investments over the past decade or more that has really been the catalyst for this to occur. Very importantly, and I think this speaks very well to the URDP that's in front of you. Downtown Quincy, the investments that have taken place here, the rising taxes, has risen the tide. The tide has risen for all of Quincy. And we can see it in the areas right around the downtown that have new proposals coming forward almost every day of the planning office, but also the rest of the city. And I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind on this. And lastly, using this remaining diff capacity, I think, is going to be the key to finalizing this transformation of Quincy Center, which was a dream 20 years ago that's had some ups and downs, but I think it's a dream that's going to be coming to fulfillment. And the city and this body should be very proud of that. And congratulations are in order to that. So with that, I will end and turn it back over to Mr. Francis for any questions that we might have. Let me go forward here.
Thank you, Mr. Seymour.
You just absorbed a lot of information. The information that we've shared tonight was really designed to explain the changes in the URDP, what the go-forward is, the fact that we're keeping the financial process tracking as we intended to, and if there are any real technical questions that you wish to develop after this meeting, by all means, we're here for you. We'd be more than happy to address them. To ask you to do a pop quiz on us, I turn it around and say it's awful hard for you to come up with answers after you've seen a presentation of that nature. Excuse me, questions. But if there are any questions you'd like to ask, you'd like to entertain it at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Francis. The chair recognizes Councilor DeBona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. Very thorough, very well-rounded. I'm just looking back at the revitalization we've come for. We're at amendment number 6 here, and looking at the downtown coming in here in 2016 as a colleague here for the last 9 years, is seeing West of Chestnut finally come up, and then the different garages, and finally we're at the Ross section of the URDP that stretches even out. I heard Star Market, I heard TJ Maxx, which was great to revitalize that particular area. I think back at Somerville's Assembly Row many years ago. I look at something that's constructed very new, Hanover Crossing, the old Hanover Mall. They said, this model doesn't work anymore. Let's demolish it. Let's bring an anchor market basket, in which we have a Star Market. Let's bring a grocer. They have a Trader Joe's over there. They have bowling alleys, they have arcades, everything we've been talking about for many, many years. Shop local, dine local, live local. They have some residential on the back end behind the movie theater, which is fantastic. We frequented, we went to a birthday party, Ryan's Arcade, on Saturday night, and we bowled, we played laser tag, arcade. It was fantastic. What I envisioned here, we've been talking about for 9 years. This is the piece of the puzzle. This is the piece that you guys are all here for. I heard parcel by parcel. I heard tweaking. And in my eyes, I say wording is market driven. Things have changed over the last 4 years since the COVID has hit us hard. Here in Quincy, we continued to construct. We didn't do what Boston did and kind of like not construct. We continue to go forward. We are where we are today because we pushed that envelope and kept on doing, which is great. We got some different stuff in line before the break, and here we are tonight. I'm just looking back at a neighboring town, just neighboring, I'm not going to say the name, $8 million in the hole. They're looking to lay off 100 teachers, possibly closing a school. I was on the school committee 10 years ago, and we were going to cut 2.5 library media specialists, 2.5, which is 2, we were going to consolidate. There was a line out the door at open forum at school committee just on Xing out 2.5 media specialists. Just imagine if we were going to lay off 100 teachers here in Quincy, how bad it would be at school committee and then filtering up into the chambers up there. I only say this because I've been getting some few emails about the 157, earmark amount. And the last quote in here, downtown Quincy redevelopment continues to pay for itself. The DIF pays for what's going to be happening in the future. I would not want to see what's happening to the neighboring town happen here in Quincy. We've got to redevelop, especially a lot of the blight properties across the downtown, across the city in general. This is our economic engine that will put us into the next sphere. The URDP, the Urban Renewal and Development Plan. We have a plan in place. You have, stuff in front of us that we can actually see, we can feel, and you can see it out there tangibly. And people have seen what we've done so far, and they can kind of feel it and touch it and see it and experience it now with the farmer's market and all these different things that we've done for Quincy. Now they're starting to buy into it. And before 2015, 16, we were trying to set the vision for folks to see what it was going to look like. And now you can see it. And now we're in the next section of this grosser area. Talking about the parking garages, 1,450 parking spots. So we have 950 and 500. Is that correct?
That's correct.
How long will it take to construct each garage?
Great question. I'm going to hand it right over to Holly, who specializes in utilization and how we get there. So, Holly, go ahead.
Counselor, it would take about 18 months to construct the garage. We anticipate the construction to start in the summer, so they would be completed in the spring of 2026.
Will there be one that goes before the other, or they're going to be simultaneously being built?
They'll be fairly simultaneously. They'll be built very close to each other, both starting in the summer.
So behind, it'll be shared parking, the 950 place spaces that were behind the new grocer, is that correct?
Correct.
What is going to be shared and what is going to be for the residential end of it? Do you have a breakdown of that yet?
We don't have that just yet. We have estimates that I could provide you via email, but we don't have that just yet.
Okay. And then the 500 that's over by the Beth Israel facility on the other side of the General's Bridge. That will be, so what I can anticipate is that facility over there, which is going to be a medical use, is going to be the daytime. So at night, will those 500 spots be able to use for the downtown? People want to use dining and shopping and all that other stuff.
Absolutely. On nights and weekends, those spaces will be available for restaurant patrons or people utilizing the downtown.
So the facility, the medical uses can be used for the daytime stuff. And then the nighttime, it's going to be open to, obviously, the folks that live here in Quincy. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Who will be building these garages? Do you have a particular?
Yeah, as the master developer, Fox Rock Properties will be building the garage for the north side of the bridge, and Atlantic Management will be building the garage on the south side of the bridge.
Do you anticipate, I mean, it's not in front of us tonight, is the Fox Rock coming in here? Is this is not part of that? Is this so, what I'm trying to ask is, does the parking garage need to be built to go to the next phase?
It's better to have the parking garages built first so that the contractors can park in the parking garages. As you've seen on the public safety headquarters, there's a lot of people involved in building these buildings. So it makes it more efficient to build the parking garage first so that the medical office building could be built second.
So if this gets, obviously we're not gonna put this forward tonight, but if we do it by the break, at least by June, do you anticipate this being done by the end of 2025?
It should be done right around there, the end of 2025 or the spring of 2026.
Okay. This is the next piece of the puzzle, the next piece of the jigsaw, the parcel by parcel that you folks are talking about, and looking forward to more discussion. Just wanted to see where we're kind of at. The presentation is very thorough, very good packet for the folks at home. Is this going to be online? Can folks take a look at this online?
Yes, we can put it up it may already be up online, but we can put it up if it's not.
Okay, that would be very helpful for folks to know how we're spending our dollars and how it's going to be repaid back. So thank you for all of you. Great presentation. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. Chair recognizes Counselor Devine.
How are you? Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Walker, for initiating it and letting us know that hopefully we'll get some more money to lower our costs, because that would be great. Yeah, it is a big bill, I know it, but it's an amazing project. Everybody wants this specialty market, so in order to get them there, we have to do this infrastructure and, like we said, finish this part. But I was wondering, as far as like having a T-bus or something, would it be going by the supermarket and the medical center? And has there been a lot of, what kind of thought's been put into traffic for that area? I understand General's Bridge was not built for nothing, so, but besides that, has there been much thought about that?
Yes, the T has definitely been a partner in this process. We want to be able to feed that area. You're going to have residential and also the commercial medical office building there. So it is the intention that the T will run a route down the actual McConville Way. And as far as the, utilization, for, future uses, we are very adaptive. That's what it's really come down to. It's a key to understand that everything that has been produced has been produced in many ways. Without the private investment, there'd be no reason to go forward with the public investment. There was a conversation had years ago that was, if you build it, they'll come. Nope. You have to build the infrastructure, and I think that's what we have to understand. That has to be built, and then everything else will line up. And so far it has. If you're looking at a parking garage that is going to service the medical office building, it's sized very, very properly to handle that role and to also serve the rest of the citizens in Quincy at off times. That's kind of the new process and way we do it. The MBTA did the same thing up in North Quincy, 620 units of housing, and we handle the parking for that, and we also handle the parking for the T and the retail that's up there. So it's combined, it's great engineering, and it's great planning that is bringing us to where we need to be. So nothing's changed. That's been the manner in which this has been done from the beginning with the original partners, both on the planning and the financial side.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Chair recognizes Counselor Campbell, then Counselor Yang.
Thank you all for your tireless work on this. It's a lot to take in, but it's also important and great. And I really just had two really quick questions. The garages themselves will generate some type of revenue. Do we know any ballpark on what that is?
Mr. Walker has given me the one finger. Go ahead.
Just me. Through you, Mr. Chairman, Council, it's a great question. That's part of a process that we're going through now, and it culminates when we have garages in place. Exactly what those numbers are going to look like, what the hourly rates are going to be, what the revenue is going to be. The LDA, as it stands and as it relates to the garage, provides the city the opportunity as part of that to go and negotiate all of that and figure all that stuff out. So that's a process that's not before the body right now. I will say that we're taking a real market-based look at the parking structure in all of downtown. We've been, as Craig Seymour had suggested, we were at a place where we're looking for traction. We gained traction. We're now at critical mass. And as the mayor likes to say, we've matured. So we do need to look at what those revenues want to be in the downtown from a different perspective than we used to. Like I said, we used to be looking at it like, all right, how do we gain traction? Well, now we've reached critical mass, and now we've matured. So we do have to take a strong look at that. What those numbers want to be, we're going to flesh those out over the next several months.
Thank you. The only other thing I had was I noticed on the Ross North garage, it's going to be designed to support solar. Is that something that is the reason why it's not going at the same time, or is it just kind of you're not sure what the final look is going to be like, or?
It would be designed to support solar panels. We haven't kind of followed through on what that might look like in the future. So should the city decide to install solar panels, it will be there.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilor Liang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to digest all this information as well and come back with questions or even communicate, between meetings to make sure that we get all the information we need. So that means a lot, right? Because there's a lot of information in front of us. And so to be given the time to review it and to talk to any residents that have any questions is really helpful. So I appreciate being given the time to do that. Councilor Demona had asked if it could be posted online. I just want to sort of follow up with that and ask if it could also be translated before it gets posted online in case
Yes.
folks want to access it, who want to read it in a different language, they can do that as well.
We will go forward with public hearings on this, and both of the public hearings, both at the planning board level, there'll be a public hearing. There'll also be a public hearing for the council, and there will be translation services provided at both those meetings.
That's great. I know you've been spearheading that effort across the city, so I appreciate that. And that actually leads to my next question, which is the community outreach, right? Because there's a lot of information for us to digest up here and for folks who are paying attention this evening, but for those who aren't, or for any of the business owners in the area, or even people who aren't in the area yet, but are interested in what we're doing and want to potentially invest, right? So thinking about all of the parties involved who want to be a part of this process, what is the opportunity for them to engage? Is it those public hearings for them to come and testify and ask questions, or are there opportunities outside of those designated meetings for any, again, current residents and or business owners or even future ones to engage and just find out more information?
Yeah, the planning department basically is the group that gathers information, also disseminates information to the public. We encourage folks to give us a call. If they have a question, there is always the opportunity for the council, as you receive questions from constituents and folks that are reaching out to you individually, to take those questions, forward them to us. There's a reasonably well-defined set of questions that will come. That's been our experience. That's been our experience with the other development that's been done at Quincy Center. So we encourage that. The more people that have access to that information, are going to make it easier for you guys to make a decision and for us to be able to respond in a timely manner. But again, the information is going to be up on the website, anything that isn't already. There's quite a bit on already, but should you need any other information or your constituents need information, they can reach the planning department. Generally speaking, if you email us a question, then we can answer the question a little bit more specifically than if you just jump on the phone and say, well, let me ask you this. Well, now that you've answered that, can I get you there? It's important, and we encourage written questions so that we can give written responses.
No, and I recognize that, it's a very strong team that you all have put together to do this work over the last, close to now 20 years, which is really strange to think about. So I know that, again, there's a lot of work and dedication, and again, a very solid, strong team that, can answer questions and inquiries. I'm more so just trying to verbalize and get it out there that anybody who, again, resides in the area, has a business in the area, maybe feels disconnected from that work or doesn't really feel like they have an in or access point, right? There certainly is, right? Start with the website, start with the planning board website. And from there, simply reach out to your department, right? And folks will then be able to have sort of that one-on-one engagement. And then, of course, with the rest of us as well. But I think it's important to reiterate that because sometimes you only see snippets of things or you hear snippets of things. And there's this game of telephone now with social media and what's on the news. And there might be misinterpretation of things, right? And certainly for us as well. And so the easiest way to, I think, get through all that misinformation is to just go directly to the source, which is the planning department. So I think it's really important for us, especially with work that's this important and this permanent, right? This long term, for people to understand where they can go for the correct information. And so I just appreciate you going through with me what I think we've already talked about multiple times, but is always important to state again. I do have, again, some just like one-off random questions about like timeline. I do have some follow-up questions about the diff because Eric is very, very smart, but sometimes when he's up here, I'm like, wait a minute, and it sort of glazes over. So I will definitely take the opportunity that you gave us to follow up with some questions and look forward to our next conversation. But yeah, thank you again. I just want to make sure that the community engagement piece was established today. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We appreciate ourselves, and also, there's a lot of institutional knowledge here. I pick on Rob Stevens all the time. He looks much younger than me, but he's been doing downtown here in the city of Quincy for over 20 years. So if I can't get to the answer, Rob will.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Mr.
Counselor. Chair recognizes Counselor Ash.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi,
Hi.
Mr. Fatsis. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you to the team. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to dive into this and not rush to any conclusions and vet it, which I assume and I know the other counselors do as well. But I had one general question. I went back and forth in my head, so I'm sure folks at home would love some clarification. We have a packet in front of us that is both an appropriation for $157 million and also an order essentially extending the URDP amendment number 6. But the appropriation is not an ask. I'll say an ask for the amendment number 6. Amendment number 6 is independent, and the appropriation is for the 2 parking garages, which we've already been through this process.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
The expansion of the URDP is absolutely in the purview of the council as well. And, you'll have questions as you look at the maps and you try to see how it affects your constituency. I can think of the corridor that comes down Franklin Street, which is really a gateway into Quincy Center. How much has that changed dramatically in the last couple of years? And those are investments that are being made by individual companies and people that have seen fit to want to develop in Quincy. As you all know, the real estate in downtown Quincy is very expensive. So if folks can work in the periphery, we all benefit from that as well. And that's the point that Greg was making when he said that, this tide raises the entire city. It's not just Quincy Center, and it has a great impact on the surrounding area and, quite frankly, throughout the entire city. So any questions that you have specific to that URDP, you can ask us. And as you have questions on the costs and the bonding, we obviously have the financial team that can respond to that as well.
Great, thank you. I didn't want folks at home to confuse the monetary
Great point.
question mark with those 4 extensions of the URDP. And then I did have one specific question. There's a chart here. I'm not sure if it'd be best for you, Mr. Fatsis, or Mr. Seymour, or Mr. Mason, but there's a chart here on page 36 of the presentation. It's titled Future Diff Revenues Before Latest Diff. And it actually shows 2022 through 2040. And I don't, maybe there won't be an answer tonight, but have the fiscal years 22 and 23 checked out with this graph? Do we know those figures?
Yes, they have. They have changed a little bit in the second graph. Those were updated and recalibrated given current assessments and the reforecasting for the development programs downtown. So it's hard to compare. They're not exactly that way, but that we have met those projections relatively well. And one of the reasons is because we keep updating and recalibrating each year with the actual data that we're seeing in the marketplace.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
We have Counselor Kane, you're all set?
Yes.
Submitting. I actually have a question for, if I could, Mr. Mason, if you could come up for a sec. Thank you, Mr. Vance. Eric, I'm on page 29.
29.
And just, could you speak to that where it talks about a surplus of 28 million, but then there's 12 years we'll have deficits. Then there's another quote that basically covers what that I think means, but could you
Yeah, absolutely.
speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, Counselor. So a best way to describe this is there was a subsequent package given, and this will be available online, titled Ross Lot Development Financing Package. On page 26 of this document, it describes projected revenue and expense summary. And you'll see on the right-hand columns, furthest right-hand column, you'll see what is essentially the combined revenue subtract the combined debt service. So in those 12 years, you're going to have more debt service than combined revenue. But in the previous in the previous 10 years or so, you're going to have a fairly large surplus. So even when you start hitting those deficit years, it's going to be drawing against that, that fund that's already accumulated quite a substantial amount of revenue. So it's just fund balance minus those years of deficit.
And that's in the booklet that we received
Correct, Counselor.
a week, the breakdowns in that booklet.
Yes, and it will be available online for the public too.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
No other questions. First of all, I encourage everyone to bother Mr. Fatsis and bother Mr. Mason. It's a lot to swallow. I mean, we've gone through a number of diff amendments and changes over the years. We got a lot of new faces, but it is gained traction. We've seen it in the last 10 years. Everybody has. And it definitely has turned a corner. But I would recommend before we come back, take a hard look at the package that Mr. Mason just talked about. This package, email with questions about financing, about the diff payments, so that we make sure we cover all the bases. But I think it was very productive, Jim. Thank Jeff, Craig, Folly, Joe Shea and company for being here. It really has come together. And the comment about the infrastructure, at first, everybody just wants it done in a day. But, the nuts and bolts have to be done before you can get there. And, it's definitely laid out for success. So with that, I'll close the finance meeting. I'll leave these items in finance to bring out at a future date. And I recommend everybody to again, talk to Jim, Eric, and whomever in the administration and any questions that you have. So thank you. Thanks, everyone. Great questions. And I'll adjourn at 7:40.
Back in the regular council session. Madam Clerk, please, next item.
First thing on the agenda is the recognition of Autism Awareness Month. No.
And tonight, honoring or recognizing Autism Awareness Month will be Councilor DeBona and Councilor Ash. I will first recognize Councilor DeBona.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just elaborating, thank you for allowing this to be on the agenda for tonight for recognizing National World Autism Awareness Month of April. Obviously, we had April 2nd was National Autism Awareness Day. The big month here is to basically light it up blue and remember everybody that's on the autism spectrum disorder. So I want to thank my colleague, Councilor Ash, for reminding us that we should probably put it on the agenda. It's good to have a nice, fresh colleague on here. So I'd like to yield my time to Councilor Ash. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
President.
Councilor DeBona. Councilor Ash.
Thank you, Mr. President. It was important for me to recognize Autism Awareness Month, which is the month of April, as Councilor DeBona just mentioned. The recognition of Autism Awareness Month raises awareness about autism acceptance and promotes inclusion and connectedness for people with autism. Social and community support can help people with autism achieve optimal health and reach their full potential. This is important to me on a personal level. A number of friends and friends' children's, family friends, and a number of constituents kind of asked me what the city does to recognize Autism Awareness Month. I thought it'd be good to bring up here. I also had a question with respect to our EMS, so QFD and QPD, and really a suggestion from a great constituent of mine. He's very bright, and that was, does QPD have a program in which individuals can log or sign up or flag their homes for housing or homing someone on the spectrum? Because that does dictate and it changes the EMS services and maybe how our first responders will respond. I did bring that up to Chief Kennedy, and we had a great conversation about all of the QPD Autism Awareness Month activities. There's patches for sale for donations. And I also was delighted and interested to learn about Smart 911. So I thought that would be a nice segue here to talk about Smart 911, which is a citywide program that allows residents to store any critical care and emergency rescue information in their online profile through the Smart 911 portal. This information can include children's photos, callers, disabilities, orders of protection, restraining order, or other rescue-related information. That's the quote from the site. It can be used to let first responders know that a person with autism lives at a particular residence, which again can be invaluable. So I wanted to recognize Autism Awareness Month for that host of reasons. And I also wanted to highlight a couple of local organizations that I've become familiar with recently, and that is South Shore Autism Center in Quincy and the ARC of the South Shore. So I'd encourage all my colleagues to look up and support those organizations. And again, I thought it was beneficial and necessary that we take a moment and recognize April as Autism Awareness Month. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ash. Thank you, Councilor DeBona, very much. Madam Clerk, next item on the agenda.
Number 1, presentation executive salary study.
And on this item, we have the city's Chief Financial Officer, Eric Mason, to illuminate us with this document. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council. So the presentation will be done by Dormanson Consulting, and I just want to introduce the two gentlemen here who will be presenting, give them a little background on them. The first individual will be Jack Dormy. He has his PhD from Virginia Commonwealth University. He spent the majority of his career in the public sector and currently teaches at a large university in their MBA program. And there's also Dr. Eric Olson, who has his PhD from the University of Alabama. Both individuals and their company have a lot of expertise in public sector and public policy and in labor experiences. And I want to talk a little bit of context on why this came about. Last year, when we were engaging Gallagher with our compensation package for non-union and for appointed individuals. One of the notes we had was that basically for elected officials, particularly for the mayor's office, there just simply wasn't enough data available to be able to analyze it at the current structure that was used for appointments. So what we did is we consulted and brought on an independent firm that is very, very specialized in something like this, given the education background. And the council was presented with both the Quincy salary evaluation report, but also there was a greater report. It was a comprehensive review package, which included things like the process of how we went through this, different terminologies that permeate this documentation, along with comparisons both of individual positions and job titles. And then a list of about 50 of the most recent chief executive positions in the state that were hired. And I'll turn it over to Dormanson Consulting now to allow them to present the report.
Council members, first, thank you for the opportunity. You want this? I'm sorry. Thank you for the opportunity to present our work to you today. We won't take much of your time, but we will give you an overview of the report that's in front of you and then take any of your questions. Maybe the background of how we got here, we were contracted by City of Quincy to take a look at the mayor's salary, CEO salary. We worked on this from February through March, presented the final findings in March, and now that's why we're here to present our findings to you. So a couple of steps as to the analysis that we made. The first step was to actually take a look as best we could across the country to similar sized cities, similar socioeconomic status cities to the extent we could find those. We found that the data was thin, hard to find, hard to get a hold of, but there's hope. We found our way. After that first step, we then stepped into, as two academics, we stepped back and got into the academic literature. The academic literature really can be summarized in two categories. The first category would be that of theories for how the market arrives at a clearing wage rate. How does the market determine that wage rate? Primarily through the economics literature. The accounting literature actually has a stream focused in and focused on executive compensation, but not necessarily from a wage determination rate, more from a agent-principal competition and the problem of the agency problem that exists between, for example, shareholders and CEOs, where the investment horizon or the wealth maximization horizon for the CEO is different than that of the shareholders. That's important because not only do we need to talk in terms of a wage determination, but we also need to make sure that the incentive structure in that wage is properly set. We then moved on to identifying potential measures that would actually help us identify an alignment. What are the measures that we can use and what are the ways we might index changes in the salary through time? That is to actually set a level that is comparable and proper, and then to be able to make changes through time. And then third, we actually were able to make a specific estimate of a range. And in that range, you'll see that we, in just a minute, you'll see that we were able to determine from the ICMA report, a survey that came out in 2018, was conducted in 2018, reported in 2019, is the most recent of those.
All right, yeah. Again, thank you guys so much. So again, my PhD is in economics, financial economics, so it's a pretty straightforward process once we had the data. The data, if you look at it, if I go back one slide, came out in 2018. And so it's pretty much a kind of a basic, you index it to the price level of 2018. You take that, you run it up through the CPI that comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, see what that range would actually be like. So this is for chief administrative officers. You guys can see in there the salary in 2018 was $231,000. If you use the national CPI, that $231,000 would be $290,000 currently. And if you take the Boston, Cambridge, Newton CPI, and my apologies, I assume CPI is the Consumer Price Index. It's put out by the BLS. Once a month. It's typically what like Social Security is indexed to. Most of the public benefits programs are indexed to that, so that's why we actually chose to do that. If you look at the range, the baseline range for the Boston, Cambridge, Newton CPI would be 298. If you take I think the range we had in the report was 298 to 370. So for me, I'm actually based at the University of Tulsa. That's where I teach in the finance department, director of our Center for Energy Studies. We looked at some of the local cities out there. The salary for Broken Arrow, a city actually comparable in size to the city of Quincy, their chief officer was making about $240,000. And so again, Oklahoma, cheaper to live than Boston, to be honest with you guys. So when you adjust for those things, this seemed like a reasonable range to put it in there.
So with the analysis grounded, we then wanted to make progress forward on establishing what our recommendations would be. We started with some principles, and then next we developed what tactics we would suggest to you for implementing based upon those principles. Three primary principles. One is to establish the proper baseline level. The last adjustment, I believe, was in 2015. I think by any standard, that's a little bit of a long period of time, particularly given some of the price level changes that we've had recently. So we need to come up with a way, a methodology of setting the proper level of compensation. We then needed to identify some ways in which you could index moving forward. Setting a static level and leaving it static for 9 years, like has been the case, is probably not optimal. Needs to be able to adjust that through time, and that needs to be a principle that needs to be put in place. And then third, we needed to suggest that we operate under a principle of transparency. Your constituency, I can imagine, would want to know, maybe not directly how the sausage is made, but they probably would want to know that you had, with due diligence, evaluated before making adjustment. Which I'm sure you all do that, but that doesn't mean the constituency doesn't need to know it and be told that.
Okay, yeah, a couple things just to kind of keep in mind. One of the biggest problems that's going on right now, you guys probably are aware, we've had a typically high inflation rate really since 2020 all the way to 2024. That's the highest level since essentially early 1980s that's taken place. One of the things that comes out when you go through these periods of high inflation, it's most things operate better from an economic standpoint when you index them. Because what happens for public employees or either teachers or cops or whatever else, the salaries are set in a nominal way. And then what happens, inflation over time erodes the purchasing power of that salary, and it causes people to try and look for other means, whether it's side hustles, to try and make sure they can consume that same bundle. So the biggest recommendation is trying to figure out some sort of indexing to the cost of living so that real wage stays the same. The other thing we opted to recommend is establish a committee that periodically assesses the compensation package. That way it's not happening every 9 years, that goes into place.
And then lastly, more of an encouraging slide, meaning I'm trying to provide some encouragement to you all. If there's a non-competitive compensation, that problem wouldn't last but so long before you would start to see it manifest in the outcomes for the city. And I know that you all know that. I think it was proper to go ahead and simply identify that here. Failure then to attract the quality that would be necessary for pay with a proper pay level, that's going to manifest as a problem as well. And then the cost of restoring, I mean, Quincy's been on a pretty good run. We don't live here, but we are economists and financial economists at heart. We know what we're looking at. You're on a good run. And I think in order to maintain that run, you're going to have to invest in many different things. And I know that there's a lot of demands on money. Those are your decisions to make. The comment is that the consequential effects of trying to undercut quality is going to be tough to overcome. It's disproportionately costly to overcome negative momentum than it is to maintain positive. Thank you for your time, and I'm ready for questions. Eric's ready for questions.
Any questions? Okay, President recognizes Councilor McCarthy.
Just a comment, really not a question. Thank you. I know that this is my opinion, I guess I'll throw out, that that salary that the mayor has is way overdue to be looked at. I think we all know that. I'm looking at some of the towns here, but that have 6,000 or 7,000 people, town manager, making that number what he's making now here in Quincy with 100,000 plus. So it's probably long overdue to take a look. It is long overdue to take a look at it. And I think the approach to the analysis is a good thing for us to absorb. I know that I haven't gone through this, but, you can make a lot of comparisons in there. And, Quincy is a big city and a healthy city with a very vibrant community. Not to take anything away from the smaller towns, it is what it is. But the numbers do, when you look at the numbers, start doing the comparisons, we're way overdue to take a look at this. So just thank you for the time and taking a look at it. And and probably setting us in the right direction to come up with the right number. Thank you.
Thanks, Counselor. All right, in the absence of any other questions, we're not taking a vote on anything tonight, so thank you for your presentation. Madam Clerk, next item.
Next is number 2, 2024-045, order recognizing.
Motion to waive the reading by Counselor Liang. President recognizes Counselor Liang.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to be brief because I want to go ahead and move this into ordinance committee so that we can meet in committee and have a more robust conversation around this. So I just want to quickly say thank you to my colleagues for their conversations and for their support and for sponsoring this. I want to just be really clear that this does not come without some technical difficulties, which, I had spoken briefly to Mr. Walker about. I don't think any of them are insurmountable, but again, I'm excited to put this into ordinance committee so we can have much larger, more robust conversation about those technical difficulties and hopefully move it to a vote after that. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to move this into ordinance committee for further discussion.
Thank you, Counselor Liang. Motion on the floor to move. Second, Counselor DeBona. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Number 3, 2024-046, a gift for $1,900 from various donors for DARE.
Motion to approve made by Counselor McCarthy, seconded by Counselor DeBona. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Counselor Campbell. Yes. Counselor Devine. Yes. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton.
Yes.
President Kane.
Yes.
8 members.
Thank you very much. That concludes the regular agenda for tonight. Approval of previous meeting minutes. Motion to approve made by Counselor Liang, seconded by Counselor Campbell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Communications and reports from the mayor, other city officers and city boards. Madam Clerk.
Yes, we do have a utility request to refer to Public Works Committee for scheduling and advertising. Grant a location, National Grid gas main replacement, Lind Street, Brockton Ave, and Empire Street.
Thank you very much. Unfinished business and preceding meeting, seeing none. Reports of committees. President recognizes Chair Harris.
Thank you very much. There was a public hearing held this evening on Council Order 2024-042, utility grant of location, National Grid, Verizon on Field Street. Positive recommendation from the Public Works Committee. Motion for approval.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve made by Councilor Harris, seconded by Councilor DeBona. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell. Yes. Counselor Devine. Yes. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor Liang. Yes. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton.
Yes.
President Kane.
Yes.
8 members.
Thank you. Is that all, Chair Harris?
Oh, one more. Thank you. Again, we held a meeting, a public hearing this evening for Council Order 2024-043, utility grant location, National Grid, Verizon, Fenno Street. Positive recommendation from the Public Works Committee. Motion to approve.
Motion approved made by Councilor Harris, seconded by Councilor McCarthy. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Yes. Counselor Campbell. Yes. Counselor Devine. Yes. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor Liang. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton. President Kane.
Yes.
8 members.
That's it. Thank you.
Chair Harris. On ordinance, President recognizes Chair Liang.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I just have one, just out of Ward 5, order number 2024-044, a two-way stop sign on Belmont Street at Lincoln Avenue. Positive recommendation out of committee.
Positive recommendation, motion to approve made by Councilor Liang, seconded by Councilor Campbell. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Yes. Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Devine.
Yes.
Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton.
Yes.
President Kane.
Yes.
8 members.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Liang. President recognizes Chair McCarthy from Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier this evening, held a Finance Committee meeting. We had a couple of presentations a few weeks ago on April 8th for two bonds that I'd like to move forward with approval. First is 2024-035, the appropriation for $7 million for the loan, fiscal 25 sewer system improvements. So I put that in the form of a motion.
Motion to approve made by Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor DeBona. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell. Counselor Devine. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton. President King.
Yes.
8 members.
Second, 2024-036. This also is a $2.5 million MWRA loan for lead service removal in the form of a motion.
Motion approved made by Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor DeBona. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Yes. Counselor Campbell. Yes. Counselor Devine. Yes. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Yes. Counselor Liang. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton. Yes. President King.
Yes.
8 members.
Also have.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Also have a couple of other items, a little housekeeping rather. This is the 2024-030 appropriation, $20 million for 2024 capital improvement plan. Presentation was done by the Commissioner, Commissioner Grazioso, but I'd like to make a motion. We'll get that approved.
Motion approved made by Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor DeBona. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell. Counselor Devine.
Yes.
Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Yes. Counselor Liang. Yes. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton. President King.
Yes.
8 members.
And
Oh, sorry. Jay.
one more, Mr. President. 2024-031. This was the $4 million capital improvement plan. Joe Shea and company gave us a presentation. This had to do with the Cleverly Court area, the park, the car wash. And I'd like to make a motion to get that approved.
Motion approved made by Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor Ash. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Yes. Counselor Campbell. Yes. Counselor Devine. Yes. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor Liang. Yes. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton. Yes. President King.
Yes.
8 members.
Is that it? Okay. Thanks, Councilor. All right. Presentation of petitions, memorials, and remonstrance. President recognizes Councilor DeBona.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unfortunately, my father-in-law, John Harrington, just passed away on Friday. He was 85 years old. Today is his birthday. He's 3 days shy of his birthday. So it's unfortunate with my wife, so he immigrated here at 50 years old from Ireland. My wife was 11 years old. So he wanted to seek a better life for his loved ones. And he was a machine operator. He had a strong work ethic. He was a jack of all trades. He did stuff all around the houses and stuff. And he was a history buff. He was an avid reader and a very good singer. He loved the Irish songs. He could sing them in the pubs all the time, maybe even at home. He battled dementia down the stretch. And unfortunately, he had passed on Friday. And he makes a good impact on the immigration here to the United States and what he has done for his family. He leaves behind, obviously, his wife, Mary, and his 2 older sons, Michael and Alan, and my wife, Neve, as well as her younger brother, Patrick. So the 2 boys had stayed in Ireland for a little longer. His son, Michael, had got a degree out in Ireland and then, has come here, and they've done very well with their lives. So the sacrifices that the father had made for his children has definitely flourished. He also leaves behind a whole bunch of grandchildren: Andrew, Luke, Tyler, Joey, Theo, Aiden, Jack, and the 1 girl, Nora, which is her mother's name. So the wake is going to be this Thursday at Cohane's from 4 to 8. And then his celebration of life will be at the funeral home at 9:15 in the morning on Friday, and then St. John's Church for after, and the burial will be at Pine Hill Cemetery. But I want to thank everybody that's reached out. Obviously, gonna miss him. Gonna really miss him. But thank you.
Thank you, Councilor DeBona. Very sorry for your loss. Any other petitions, memorials, remonstrance? Motions, orders, and resolutions? Okay, scheduling of committee meetings and public hearings, we have, would you like to? Okay. So Monday, May 6th, we have an ordinance committee meeting scheduled at 6:30 PM to hear the Lunar New Year order that Councilor Lang submitted today, followed by 7:30 PM City Council meeting. On that, motion to adjourn made by Councilor Yang, seconded by Councilor Rona. All those in favor? Ayes have it. Have a good evening.